Okay. Welcome to Thriving with Mental Illness, a podcast with real talk, an open and honest conversation about issues surrounding mental health. There are no topics that are off limits and no questions that aren't okay to ask. I'm Mikkel Buck, author, public speaker, and suicide survivor who's lived with mental illness for over 20 years. And with me is my guy, Adam.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. We are super excited today to be meeting with Kevin and Margaret Hines. Kevin and Margaret, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
We're so excited to be here.
We're so excited to have you. So
a little bit of trivia. This is the first couple guests we've had on our podcast. So
yes, it's like a double date only via podcast. How fun is that?
Perfect. Oh, what we've always wanted.
And I've got my tea.
We forgot our dinner snacks. We'll just have to imagine or repeat this down the road. I don't know.
Yeah.
So Mikkel, why don't you introduce a little bit how we met Kevin and Margaret?
Yeah. Well, we were so lucky to meet you guys in person at the Hope Gives Gala that was held in October here in Phoenix, Arizona. So I was able to be a sponsor for their gala. Hope Gives is one of my favorite foundations and charities, and one that we contribute to regularly as in our business, Mental Illness Warrior, and with our things. So we love Jen, and she got you, Kevin, on and got the both of you together to come. And I got to meet the introduction. Yeah. Fortunately, this isn't live, so we can edit. That's why we do it.
I love that.
Fortunately, Jen was able to make an introduction for Adam, you and I, to meet Kevin and Margaret. And not only, Kevin, was your message just amazing. And I mean, I had chills listening, but honestly, to meet Margaret, your other wonderful half, the warmth that came from you, Margaret, you guys were just so genuine and loving. And we left and I was like, dang, Adam, they are amazing. They are amazing together, but separately also just amazing people. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's our honor.
Appreciate
Absolutely.
that.
So glad we met. It's always nice to meet other couples that have kind of similar challenges, but that are so aligned in their mission. So it's not often that we meet couples like that. So it's quite a blessing for us. So thank you.
Good.
Well, we were going to get into it. And I know, Kevin, you've been on a lot of podcasts. You've been on a lot of interviews. You've been all over the nation. I'm assuming
all
you've
over
been
the
international.
world, not the nation, all over the world. You've renowned author, filmmaker, be here tomorrow, your message, your hashtag, you speak everywhere. So give us in a nutshell, maybe a 5-minute version of your story in case people haven't heard, because you're amazing.
Oh, thank you. So in a nutshell, born in abject poverty, adopted by a beautiful family, given a great childhood and adolescence. And it was in that adolescence at 17 and a half when my brain broke. I had a complete mental breakdown. And from 17 to 19 years of age, I was on this rocky journey, skyrocketing into manic euphoric natural highs and crashing into depressions, because once you go up, you must come down. And at 19, because of bipolar depression, I attempted to take my life by leaping off the Golden Gate Bridge, which is a suicide attempt that used to be 99.9% fatal.
To clarify, you weren't trying to, you actually did jump off.
I did. I leapt off that bridge to try to take my life. And when I did so, it was a leap that was 99.9% fatal. And because of my survival and what the doctors learned from my being in the hospital and them doing the surgery they did on me, they've higher that mortality rate now to 99.5% fatal. So they've saved a lot more lives since me because of what they learned from my case.
Oh, wow.
I always say I get to be here. And I believe that. I believe we all get to be here. And that it is a privilege and a gift, no matter the pain we might be in. And I'm in a lot of pain. I'm in a lot of pain physically from what I did to myself. No pity needed. I did that to myself. I take responsibility for my actions. But it's been a long journey. In the last since 2000 till this year, 23 years, 10 psych ward stays for suicidal crisis, chronic thoughts of suicide, but they'll never take me. I made a cognitive decision when they found me in that Coast Guard boat that no matter the pain I would ever be in again, I would never attempt again.
Yeah.
And I kept that promise. And there are two things I do every time I'm suicidal, and two things I teach people all around the world to do when they become suicidal. Number one, find a mirror, anywhere. Look into that mirror and say, my thoughts do not have to become my actions. They can simply be my thoughts. They don't have to own, rule, or define what I do next. If they're self-violent, aggressive, or bad. The next thing I do is turn to anyone willing to listen to me. And obviously, most of the time, it's this one right here.
Beautiful lady to your side.
Beautiful lady, my absolute better half. But if she's not there, I will turn to an audience of 5,000, and I have. And I will say 4 simple but very effective words. I need help now. The difference between me and someone who attempts or dies by suicide is that I don't stop saying I need help now until I find someone willing to help me. Mm-hmm. And for 3 years, I've stayed alive with those two techniques for keeping me away from suicidal crisis.
I remember when you were speaking at the gala, that's the first time I'd heard you in person. I mean, obviously I've heard your message. You have so much out there that you've put out and helped just millions of people, really. But one of the things that I really identified with your message, I remember after my second suicide attempt, we had 3 small children at the time, and they were like, what, 4, 5, and 8 or something. They were small. And I remember being in the hospital and waking up, realizing what I had done. And it sounds a little bit surprising, but, or maybe people might not understand, but I was surprised myself. Like, I knew I wasn't doing well, but I didn't think that I would have done that. And when I woke up and realized that I was alive still and I got another chance, I remember thinking to myself, I refuse to lose my life to this. I will not die like this. Like, I won't. And, you know, we ended up having to change a lot of things about how our family operates and what we're able to take on and do. And just the way we had to structure things at home, because it looked quite different than like the traditional family I grew up in, just with, you know, what we're able to participate in and things we have to say no to. But I realized I will say no to anyone. I will, like, everyone else is down my priority list except Adam and me and our children. Like, anything else is going to have to go by the wayside, because these are the most important people in my life, is right in my home. And we really like had to hunker down, and I don't know, like us against not the world necessarily, but like us against, man, this big, hard, heavy weight. And it took all of us fighting together, and thank heavens we all made it through.
Yeah.
It feels like that sometimes. It's like your family against the illness, really, because you're battling the illness and you have to find coping mechanisms and different strategies and life structures that work best for you, so that you have a toolbox that basically equips you to take on those challenges. I had to figure that out early on with Kevin, because, you know, it's very different being married to somebody with bipolar, and then operating as a person without bipolar disorder or a diagnosed mental illness. It's a totally different mindset. But it took me a few years, I would say a couple years, to really kind of understand, okay, hang on, there are things I can do to make things better, and they are a little challenging. I'm going to have to want to do these things though, and really, really like want to adapt them. Otherwise, this marriage won't be successful. He might die by suicide. I mean, you just know, right? Like, you either give yourself as a person and as a couple and as a family a chance, or you make the conscious decision that it's not worth it. I think that at the end of the day, that's what we tell a lot of spouses that are married to people with bipolar. You have to make the decision. You know, is that something that's worth it? You have to be honest with yourself, because for some people it's truly not, and that's okay too. But then you have to figure out a way to like exit, right? So that you're not lying to yourself and you're being really honest that you're making all these life changes because you not just want to keep that person alive, but you want a thriving marriage and a great relationship and a healthy family. So yeah, it's quite a
Everything you just said, I'm like, Margaret, speak for 3 hours and expand on everything you just said.
She's incredible.
It's hard. I mean, it's definitely tough. It was really hard to come to that realization. And, you know, it's so funny because when I tell wives and husbands and partners this, when I tell them this, right? Because they'll say, well, what's your advice? And I say this and I'm really brutally honest, you know, and I get right to the point. You see their faces and immediately it's like, oh my God, like she's right, but I don't want to hear this. Or, oh my God, this is actually right, but this is going to be so hard. And, you know, I think it's a matter of whether you want it or to work or not, for your marriage, for your family. And that's it. Like bottom line, right?
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about this before. And to me, I don't know that it's any different than lots of other hard things that couples have to work through. Like it is different. It is heavy. It's not, I'm not saying it's
not
just
nothing.
like everything else. But I'm saying I think every marriage has to work hard through something difficult. Sometimes it's financial difficulty, sometimes it's physical health, sometimes it's, you know, mental health. So I mean, there's just so many
Sometimes it's people who snore.
Sometimes if that's your hard thing, then maybe that's but you know,
come up with solutions, right?
It's
right.
It's the same, like you either dig down and figure out how are we going to attack this together?
Yeah.
And it can't be your issue and my issue. It's got to be an us thing. Like we're going to attack this together. And you know, whether it's mental illness or it's financial poverty, or whether, you know, you got, you know, paralyzed in a car accident, or I mean, so many different, you lose a child, you know, to death.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many hard things, but these things are either going to drive you apart or they're going to bring you together. And
we made a vow before God in good times and bad, through sickness and health. And we intend to keep that vow because we love each other unconditionally. And those vows mean something to us. They're not just written on a piece of paper arbitrarily to maybe follow or not. For me, our faith is very clear, and that faith guides us through our painful moments. That faith gets us to the other side of times of turmoil, times of stress, and times of hardship. And it's really helped me get through all the hard times that even my brain has caused, you know?
Yeah. When we met you first, faith is very important to us in our lives as well. It's been a core value, you know, when we got married and that we've tried to raise our family with. It just brings peace and calm for us. And when we met the two of you, and when Margaret, I realized like, hey, these guys have been, how long have you been married now? 15 years? Is 17. That right? 17.
17.
Oh, I love that. When's your anniversary?
June 24th.
Okay. We'll send you an anniversary card. Write it in the notes.
When's yours?
June 24th. But
yours?
Ours is September 14th.
Oh, okay.
So we will be 29 years this year. Is that right?
What?
Dang. Is that right? 28.
It was 96.
96. What is 24? Yeah. 28 years.
Beautiful. That's wonderful.
Wow.
I know. That's wild. It's wild to me. Because you knew me really before I had my big bipolar, like my big breakdown, my crash, my first suicide attempt, all of those things. And I remember being so nervous. Because we had kind of, like in college, like you went off and served a mission for our church. I was still going to college. And when you came back, when we started talking about getting married, I had already had that suicide attempt. And I was like, shoot, when I come clean, so to speak, like when I lay it all out and say, hey, you know, you've been gone for a hot minute. Let me tell you what's been going down, bub. you know, this, that, and the other, I really was like, oh shoot, I'm pretty sure this guy's going to leave, because that's a lot. And I didn't have stuff figured out yet. You know, I wasn't all the way stable. I didn't all the way know how to handle it and live with it. And obviously, you know, it took some years there because I still had a second suicide attempt because we had not adjusted enough when we had small children. And I was nervous about that, but I was glad that you knew me before, because I always knew that, I don't know, I feel like you always knew me, and it was never like, the bipolar was separate. It was not me. And I know some people kind of don't know how to separate those two.
Right. They identify only as, instead of saying I have bipolar, they say I am bipolar. I've never said I am bipolar. I'm Kevin Hines. I had 16 and a half years before I was diagnosed with bipolar depression. And I've had these years after being diagnosed with bipolar depression. And I'm so much more than bipolar depression.
Well, it's a disease. It's diabetes. You wouldn't say I'm diabetes.
I'm diabetes.
I am.
Proper English.
You are correct, Margaret.
So were you done?
Oh, I was just going to ask and talk about, like, when we first met you at the conference and I talked to you, Margaret, I was so excited. Literally, I got like a little bit of butterflies in my stomach going, I cannot wait to talk to her, because I don't know many successful couples and families who have genuinely happy relationships. And it was very apparent meeting the two of you, the love and care that you have for each other. And that's why I was like, oh, babe, we've got to have these guys on, because that is the number one thing that we get asked about very frequently. And a lot of times the question kind of lends itself to be a little more of, wow, Adam, you're amazing. How do you stay with her? And I'm always like, I don't think people mean to ask it like that, but that's what comes out. And I was so curious. Like, I wonder if you guys get any of that same kind of sentiment.
All the time. In the beginning, I was kind of, you know, the first few years, I was insulted for him, and my responses were kind of like aggressive.
Like me, I got bent out of shape. I'm like, what? Because he snores. I know it's hard to be married. I know.
I mean, we joke, right? Like our secret is that, like, I'm a woman. I have hormonal issues, and you know, I embrace all of my womanly issues. I own them all, and sometimes I have more testosterone than I should. I mean, all of that stuff. Like, so our joke is that I'm the actual crazy one.
Joke is like, she's crazier than I am.
What does that say about me? I'm crazy. The double cray. What does that mean?
No, you know what that is? It just means that we're just absolutely like normal, and it's not. The bipolar doesn't define you. You're a woman. I'm a woman. You and I are probably both have the same amount of emotions. I'm pretty sure I would wager to bet that that's the case, because we're women, not because you have bipolar disorder and it's got nothing to do with that. I think also, you know, what I've found with Kevin is he's so sensitive, and I don't know if that's the bipolar disorder or if that's
I've always been like that.
Who he is. But it was really hard. Truth is, it was really hard for me to embrace that part of him. Most women would love it. It made me absolutely crazy because he was like extremely sensitive, and I'm very like pragmatic, and I get right. Like, I don't like to waste time, but I have to say things in a really nice and kind way sometimes in order to get my point across.
I'm loving watching your facial expressions, Kevin, while Margaret's talking. That's the best part.
Oh yeah.
But it's great. And I'm so, I know I get to be married to this guy, and I'm so blessed, but we definitely have our challenges. We are very different people. We approach life very differently. We're
really pretty polar opposites.
We are actually, we don't agree on probably 75% of things. We don't, but we argue.
We find a way to compromise.
I like arguing. I like confrontation. I'm a very, very confrontational person because I don't like wasting time. So I'd rather just like, let's just get it over with. Yeah. And Kevin's like, no, let's massage this. Let's talk through this. And I'm like, oh, that's just such a waste of time.
To the problem.
Yeah. The solution. Let's just implement. And he's like, let's talk about it. So we have to meet each other halfway. And I think a lot of it is also for us, it's respect. Like, a really, really deep respect for each other is what we have built our relationship on. Because without that and without trust, you have nothing. You can have all the love in the world, but if you don't respect each other enough to make those adjustments, I mean, with the mental illness, which is, it's there, you can't deny that that's going to creep up on you, whether it's the depression or the mania or my hormonal issues, like things are going to happen in life, right? So without the trust and without the respect, you're not going to be able to work through anything.
Yeah.
That's
true.
When you guys met, so talk a little bit about that. You know, how did you guys meet? And what did you think initially, Margaret?
Okay, I'm gonna go first.
Let Margaret tell the story, because I was
Adam's like, we were kind of talking through ahead of time. He's like, make sure Margaret answers that one. It's always so much more interesting when the wife answers.
Come on, Margaret,
You know,
go for it.
again, like my version is very condensed, right? I get right like this, and Kevin's is like the long storytelling.
Maybe we flipped it. Maybe we didn't know.
So we met when my cousin was in a hospital, psych ward in San Francisco, and Kevin was he was a patient, my cousin, for methamphetamine use, and Kevin was a patient as well, for suicide attempt.
Yeah, suicide
ideation.
Ideation. Yeah.
This was his third psych ward stay. Involuntary. By the way, he's had 7 after that were all voluntary. And those were already with me. Like we,
oh wow.
Okay. Yeah. So I met Kevin at the psych ward that he was a patient in, and I was a visitor alongside 20 of my family members visiting my cousin who was also a patient. And I was in a relationship with somebody else. So it wasn't like, you know, we just started dating. We actually became friends. He became very close with my family. He and my cousin both got out. We're both in recovery, and Kevin would come to my mom's for dinners on Sundays, and he was living in a halfway home because he wasn't welcome home to go back to his mom's or his dad's. 23 years old, like he didn't have a job. He was on Social Security in California. It was a really rough time for him. I was, you know, working between New York and San Francisco. I worked on Wall Street. I was building my career in private equity. So I wasn't interested in Kevin in any romantic way.
It was love at first sight for me. So,
not for me. I didn't, it was just like, Kevin was just like a family, just a friend, right?
I was just there.
And that was in June. And then in October, that was in June. And then in July, August, I broke up with my boyfriend of 9 years. And Kevin found out through one of my cousins that I was single again. And so I was, you know, dating around because I was part of my healing process was rebounding. And so I was just dating just to get my mind off of the breakup, which worked really, really well. And then Kevin asked me out. We end up going on a date, and the rest is history. I had never met anybody, you know, and trust me, I've dated guys from all walks of life. I mean, Wall Street guys, lawyers, doctors, people working in DC, politicians. You know, everybody was just very career driven like me, but Kevin, who was not at that time career driven at all, he was just trying to keep himself well. His focus was staying alive, right? So it was very hard for me, I thought, for us to kind of see eye to eye on things. We didn't have anything in common. But I went out on this date with him, and he was the very first person I had met in my entire life at that point, and probably to this day, that made me want to be a better person. I just never knew that feeling, right? Like I knew I was a good person. I mean, I was a great person. I'm a great person, but there was something about him that made me realize, like, okay, you can be like this guy just elevates the bar for being a really good person. And I cannot believe that I actually met somebody like I never thought about that kind of stuff, right? And it was just so organic, and he changed the trajectory of my life because I obviously married him a year and a half to almost 2 years later. So that's my story.
Wow. That is a great story. I'd love to hear, Kevin, from your perspective. So love at first sight, was it just like, man, I want to marry this person?
For me, I turned around. First of all, I like to give things context.
Okay.
I was in the psych ward, and I had finally been following a treatment plan. I was finally being honest in therapy. Who knew that was a good idea, right? and I went to my case manager, Jana from Brooklyn. I was like, Jana, you got me in here doing 10 forms of therapy. Give me 5 forms of therapy and something productive to do. I'm bored. And she was like, wait, you want to volunteer for the psych ward you're staying in? And I was like, yeah. She was like, Kevin, that's highly unethical, probably illegal. That's not going to happen. And the next day, Jana went on vacation. New case manager comes in, and she was this certified 1960s hippie from San Francisco. She wore tie-dye shirts every day. She was a mess. And I go to her and I said, I'd love to volunteer for the hospital. And she goes, you want to volunteer for us? That sounds like a lovely idea. What can we have you do? And they should never have left this lady at the nurse's station by herself. She was dangerous. There were 22 giant green binders on a shelf, right? And like back when people used binders before e-files. 22 giant green binders. And she pulls the first one out and she goes, I know, you can file these. And I said, well, what are they? And she goes, oh, patient binders. HIPAA privacy laws, people. And she literally said, just do it alphabetically and don't look at the details. So
I love this lady. I don't know who she is.
So I did it alphabetically and I didn't look at most of the details.
Most.
So I finished 22 giant green binders. And she gives me my next job, clean out the giveaway clothes closet. So when people leave the hospital, they got something to wear. Every patient in the hospital is wearing a hospital gown, hospital pants, and hospital slippers with grips on the bottom. I finished the giveaway clothes closet organization, and I come out of the closet with a Ralph Lauren double-breasted polo suit, a flared collar, like some kind of gangster owns the place. And I walk up to the station, and I 5-finger discount, a notebook, a clipboard, and a pen. And I give myself my new job, hospital documentation. It was just Leonardo the Ninja Turtle. I still have the drawing. It's incredible. And I'm drawing that on the clipboard, but I'm in a suit in a psych ward. And my father walks in. Now, what you have to understand about Patrick Kevin Hines is that he is a pragmatic, pessimistic, and stone-faced man. He very rarely shows emotion. He's tough as nails. He played 20 years of hockey as the goalie with no mask. Okay. And so he walks in and he's a banker. So he's wearing a suit, right? And he can't see me out of his left eye because he's had a stroke in that eye and he has no peripheral vision there. And he says to the lady at the front desk, excuse me, I'd like to see my son, Kevin, please. And she goes, mm-hmm.
He's right there.
And he turns and does a double take and goes, Kevin, what the hell are you doing wearing a suit in a psych ward? I said, Dad, I work here now.
Oh my God.
And he goes,
oh my God.
Like he's just freaking out. And he goes, get me the manager, to the lady in front. And she goes, sir, this is not a hotel. He goes, get the head nurse right now. And she goes, you're looking at her. And so they're going at it. And security comes around the corner. And here I am in a suit in the psych ward. And I had my moment. And I was like, that's it. No more Pat Hines. Get him out of here. They physically removed my father like I had authority over them.
This was mania.
Complete mania. But they did what I asked. And my dad was so angry. He was so upset. We laugh about it now. Anyway. So this,
you laugh.
Well, I laugh about he stares at me angrily, but and so that was the day before Margaret came in. Now here's the preface to this. Her cousin who came into the psych ward had already been there for 2 weeks. This was her first time seeing him. All the other family had been there. 15 to 22 people would come to see this young man every single day from his Spanish Filipino American family. Nobody did that. Nobody had that. Nobody comes to visit you in a psych ward. Yeah. This kid had 2 entourages. The difficulty with him was that he was catatonic because of the drugs. He couldn't talk and he couldn't move. So the problem I had is that the hospital staff would roll him into the cafeteria, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, bring him a tray full of food. They'd take the tray away full of food an hour later. It broke my heart. He was starving. And nobody was attending to the fact that they needed to break him out of the catatonia. So every single day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 2 weeks, I would sit with him. His name was Eduardo. I would sit with him and I would talk to him. I would tell him stories. I'm trying to elicit a response. 2 weeks into his stay, a month into mine, he goes like this. Jesus Christ, man, you talk too much. Leave me alone. I know your whole life story. Like, cut a guy a break. And he's freaking out. People were clapping. So anyway, so after that day that I had the suit in the psych ward, Margaret comes in. And Eduardo is now talking. But he doesn't like me. I'm the kid that talks too much. And so I'm at the nurse's psych ward station giving myself my next job, the afternoon visiting hour announcements on the PA system. And I was rhyming them because it was more efficient. And so I've got this microphone. I'm talking into it. I'm announcing visiting hours. And I get a tap on my left shoulder. And I turned around and there she was. And look at her. Her eyes were almond brown, sexy, and cool. And I was done. And I knew the rest of my life. I just didn't know how. And I was like, well, don't tell her that. That would be awkward. So she says, excuse me, do you work here? And I had on a pink polo shirt, khaki cargo shorts, and sandals from the giveaway clothes closet that fit me out the box. And I said, as a matter of fact, miss, and the entire nursing station was there, 20 people. I said, as a matter of fact, miss, I am a volunteer.
You lie.
And they looked at me and they didn't say anything because I'd worked too hard, right? So I says, I'm looking for my cousin. His name is Eduardo. Do you know what room he's in? I said, madam, right this way. And I walked her to the room, kind of like putting my hand on the side, like
weird.
on the small
so
of her back and
weird.
her elbow, and I glided her there, which she said was creepy.
Yes.
But anyway, she didn't say it till later. But I get her to the room and the kid sees me. He hates me. I talk too much. I duck out into the hallway and I hear her say to him, your nursing staff is so nice. Now you have to understand, I have that clipboard in my hand and I've just finished Leonardo the Ninja Turtle, but it's like this. So it looks like I work there, right?
So I was nervous too, because I've never been to a psych ward before. And I thought like, this is like The Shining or One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or something. So you can get accosted at any moment. Like I just didn't know. So when I walked in, I was like, okay, find a nurse or someone that can protect you. And I thought that it was him from the patients.
So when you're walking around the ward, everybody else is wearing the hospital gown, but me.
Not you.
And so I duck out in the hallway. Your nursing staff is so nice. And her cousin goes, that guy is a nutball. Jumps off bridges. Don't talk to that guy. And I ran in there. I was like, excuse me. It was one bridge, plural. That's ridiculous. So she comes out and she goes, why'd you lie to me? I said, Margaret, I didn't lie to you. I'm a volunteer at this very hospital. I just happen to also live here. And so anyway, he was about to get out of the hospital. Margaret comes in for one last visit for Eduardo.
This is like 12 weeks later.
Yeah. So I
know you
4 weeks later. So it was only 1 month.
Yeah, 1 month.
So I walk up to her at the door, at the psych ward door. And I said, Margaret, hey, Margaret, when I get out of here, could I like take you to coffee? She was still doing that guy. He was like an NFL player. And so she looks at me, but she smiled at me. So I thought, oh, I got this in the bag. It's easy. I'm done. And she looks around at the H-shaped psych ward. She goes, oh, honey, hell no. I was like, oh, man, oh, darn, but I was persistent. So
shoot's got to shoot,
Her cousin gets out of the hospital. I get out of the hospital. I go to my halfway home for the mentally ill. I do 30 days probationary period. You follow the rules to a T, or you're out of there. And here's the thing. I was getting $3 a day from Social Security income. The rest was going to the house, right? And we were getting frozen foods. Rats were crawling all over our faces. Patients in the hospital were getting in fights. I got punched a couple of times. It was really awful. And but I was saving my money because I was going to take Margaret out on my 30th day. So I called Margaret and I said, hey, Margaret, it's Kevin. Kevin Hines, from the psych ward, can I take you out to dinner? It's Friday. And she, she was just so thrilled. She couldn't find the words, Okay, Margaret, it's a date. If it goes south, you never have to see me again. One date. And she goes, one date. Okay, fine. So I show up at the park, and I made a giant mistake. I showed up at her apartment with a giant ski duffel bag of lots of my things. He goes, what is that? I said, Margaret, it's a funny story. When you leave the halfway home on Friday, it's Friday. You can't go home until Monday. You made reservations past 9 p.m. Sorry. Hi. And she was like, oh, hell no. I said, Margaret, I planned for this. I will take this bag. I will lay on those Lombardi stairs with this bag as my pillow, with my jacket as my blanket, and sleep there in the rain if I have to. But I came all this way. We have to go on this date. She goes, oh, God, fine. Go to this restaurant, Cafe Sport in San Francisco, that she made reservations at. You don't order at Cafe Sport, or you didn't back then. They order for you. They look at you, they judge you, and they order for you.
Oh,
and
fun.
So it used to be an old mafia hangout, and now all the politicians go there. Hint, hint. And so,
Same.
And so we get there, and the tables are these tiny tables, and the host obviously liked her. She'd been there a million times with other guys.
No,
I'm kidding. And so they get her an eggplant Parmesan dish, small, quaint, clean, fits on the table. But this guy didn't like me. He puts on my side of the table a giant bed of spaghetti, a mountain of marinara sauce, a huge uncracked lobster, a votive of plate, and a candle with boiling butter on top of it, and a very oddly cut lemon wedge. I'm freaking out because I'm wearing my only good white shirt. I bought an Old Navy on sale at the clearance rack for $5. That's a 2-day shirt.
And a half day. Yeah.
So I'm freaking out, and I'm like, okay, I can't get anything on the shirt because she'll think I'm a slob. So we're getting ready. We're getting to dinner. And I go and I take the cracker toward the tail of the lobster. Crack, marinara sauce everywhere. It was like a Captain America's shield on his shirt. And I'm like, she thinks I'm a slob. I asked her later, that's what she thought. And I was like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. This is the first date. What am I doing? I said, Kevin, do something classy right now. I was like, what does that mean? Figure it out. So I take the lemon wedge, I pick it up. I start to shake. I'm looking at Margaret's eyes. I'm looking at the lemon wedge. I'm looking at the lobster. And I go like that. And I squoze the lemon wedge harder than the lemon wedge has ever been squozen. And a stream of lemon juice flies directly into her left eye. And she's going like a fire hose. And mascara is running down her face. She looks like the band Kiss to the Film The Crow. And the lady next to us decides to get involved. Mister, you okay? I was like, hey, Smoker 67, it's a date. It's going south. You're not helping. Thank you. Margaret, I'm so sorry. But my brain said, Kevin, do something even classier right now. And I go for the plate of boiling butter, and I tip the plate, and 4 giant droplets of boiling butter fly across the table between her blouse onto her chest, and they burn her. Oh. And she screams bloody murder, and the restaurant stops.
Like bubbling
the
butter.
Restaurant stops cold. People drop their knife and fork, literally. And I'm freaking out. And I panicked, and I think I'm a gentleman. I grabbed my napkin and I reached over, and I'm doing this on a first date right here.
Classy.
Literally goes, what are you doing? And I realized what I was doing, and I was like, oh my God, Margaret, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm so sorry. And she says the first 2 words on a first date you never want to hear in the first 10 minutes of a meal when you haven't eaten your food. Check, please. I'm like, oh, you've got to be kidding. Now, I'm making $3 a day for 30 days, and this guy has ordered me the lobster meal. Mm-hmm. I can't cover it. She pays the bill. We leave the restaurant. Walks a mile in front of me. We get to the apartment, and she turns to me and she goes, Kevin, we're going to the roof. Just like that. I was like, Margaret, are you going to throw me off? She goes, no. We go up the rickety old elevator to the roof. There are 2 purple yoga mats. The beautiful scenery of the Bay Bridge in front of us, lit by a full moon. It's gorgeous. Behind us is the tower of the Golden Gate Bridge. And she goes, I said, Margaret, what are we doing here?
I didn't want to be inside my apartment with this guy, and it was so and he and I felt bad. Like, I didn't want him to sleep like
I would have slept
on
down
the
the stairs. I would have
So
done that.
of course I let him crash on my couch all weekend, but it was like just awkward.
Wait, but hold on.
right?
This is really important. This is
So
really, this is
I
really
want
important. Hold on.
the space upstairs
Yeah.
to have like open space.
Hold on. This is important. So I said to her, "What are we doing here, Margaret? What are we doing on the roof?" And
Yeah.
she goes, "Kevin, if all we do right now is stare at that full moon, nothing else can go wrong." It was really nice. It was really nice.
Wow.
And then so she says, "So tell me your story." And so I start telling her my story, and I stopped hearing her talking, or I didn't hear anymore. And I turn over. In 5 minutes, she was asleep.
I was on East Coast time.
She was asleep. And so we literally slept on the roof of the apartment. It wasn't that cold. It was okay. The weather, it was essentially weather, wasn't that bad. And we slept on the roof of the cold.
warm.
We woke up at 6 a.m. to this like dewy mist, and it was incredible. And the bottom line is she gave me a second date.
After all of that.
All of this, I'm like, I'm
And
still not connecting how it was history from there. I'm still like, there's a gap in my head.
So
Not reconciling.
on our second date, we're driving to go see Mos Def in concert.
The following weekend.
Following weekend, he didn't show up to his own concert. We're driving back across the Golden Gate Bridge, right?
No, that was the Babe
Bridge.
Bridge.
We're driving back, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. I said, "Margaret, I have something to tell you." And she's like, "What, Kevin?" I said, "Margaret, it's very important. It's really crucial. It's really cool.
Tell you,
I'll tell you how to spit it out. What is it, Kevin?" I said, "Margaret,
Come on, talk faster.
Margaret, I love you." And she goes, "Thank you." So Margaret, how did you end up loving me back?
After all of that.
Face through this whole storytelling is a story in and of itself. It's hilarious to watch, and I'm captivated by Kevin's words, but I cannot take my eyes off Margaret's face.
Oh, it was quite an adventure.
It
It was so, at least for me, everything about those first few weeks and then months was unexpected. Everything that you would expect from a first date didn't happen, and the things you wouldn't expect happened. And then it was just so unconventional too, because my mom, my family knew him, but my mom's like my best friend, and she didn't want me to have a difficult life, right? You're gonna marry somebody who you know, or at the time date somebody that you know jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and admits and is very honest about being chronically suicidal, has bipolar disorder.
Yeah,
every once in a while exhibits signs of mania, right? And my mom just was like, "You're gonna have a really hard time." She was completely opposed to us being together. So it was hard from the beginning for me. But there was a pull with Kevin, like with him, it was just everything was easy, whether we were out at dinner or we were working out, going for a walk, or hanging out with friends after work. Everything just felt natural. And with him, everything immediately, even that first weekend, it just felt right. And he just felt like home to me. Yeah. And I knew in my heart, I knew in my gut that he was the one I wanted to be with for the rest of my life. Like, I didn't know how it was going to turn out. You just never really know, right? Life, like I said, I'm a pragmatist. Life is really funny sometimes, and it throws you challenges and curveballs. So you just never know. But what I knew was how I felt. And I felt like this was the guy that I wanted to be with. I missed him when I wasn't with him. And when I was with him, I was just happy. And it just felt like home, you know? And then we moved in together like the following year, actually, early, like March of 2005. Yeah. So 9 months later, we moved in together into our first apartment in San Francisco, and the rest is history. We got married the year after that in 2007. We got engaged in 2006. We got married in 2007.
There's our wedding photo right there.
Right? I can see it. I need my glasses, but I can see it.
Yeah. And
to come around to where we started, so people that think, they're like, so you're such a saint to be married to him, you're such, but the reality is there's mutually beneficial I mean, it's enriching in both ways. It's not like it goes one way and one person is the caretaker of the other person.
No.
It's, your marriage is not going to last unless you're getting meaningful things that you need from your partner. And obviously Kevin provides that.
Yeah.
And in our relationship, you know, Mikkel provides that. So it's not, and people who don't understand that just think of it as an illness, going, wow, that's got to be really hard. You married an illness. And you're like, no, I didn't marry an illness. I married a human being that's awesome, you know,
Yeah.
that happens
Yeah,
to
that is a
have
partner.
a mental illness that,
Yeah. Yeah. I
so
mean,
I love
look, if
that.
that is our biggest challenge, I'm like, our life is easy, honestly.
Yeah.
Because we are each other's true partners for sure, 100%. I mean, there are years, I was going to say there are days or weeks or months, but there are years when I need more from him than he needs from me. And that's just, you know, but we don't count. We don't count. It just, you need me, I'm there. You need me, I'm there. It just, that's a true partnership, right?
Now, one thing that comes up, and you know, Kevin obviously has done a lot of work to manage and to just stabilize and to, you know, and Mikkel has done the same thing. We get people that reach out and say, my spouse, they're not addressing it. They're not taking it seriously. They're not, you know, getting with a doctor. They're not on meds. They're not doing all these things. And we don't really know what to say, because I can't minimize how difficult that is when there's no stability and there's no, I mean, we went through a period on Mikkel's second, you know, suicide attempt where it's really, you know, logic doesn't work. I mean, it's just like you're on totally different planets.
Yep. So did we. I mean, there were definitely some hard times. In 2011, it was really, really hard. Kevin had to go through ECT, have some electroconvulsive therapy. He was suicidal again. We got through that in about I would say it took about a year. That was a really tough year. And then 2017 and 18 were really hard because he had medication that was basically poisoning his and his brain. So they had to take him off of everything, which caused significant psychosis.
I ended up with an immunodeficiency, and
it was really challenging.
Yeah.
It was hard. It was really painful for me to watch and for him to go through. Really.
Yeah.
You know, we get the same questions from spouses that say that. And, you know, I two things. There are two pieces of advice that I find myself constantly giving. The first piece is to the spouse that's asking, how do I take care of my wife, husband, child even? Because it's so hard and sometimes I can't keep up. Sometimes, you know, the first piece of advice I say is, first of all, you have to make sure you're okay. So you come first. And that's not selfish. That's just intelligent. If you are not well, it's like the old adage, put your oxygen mask on yourself first, then you can that's really what it is you got to make sure you're okay. If you're not okay, you're not equipped to take care of anybody else. Yeah. So you gotta make sure that you are in optimal shape and as best as possible so that you can actually pick up the slack and take care of somebody else. Number one. Number two, if your partner or your child, you know, isn't willing to go to that point where they're taking their meds, where they're following a routine, doing everything that they can to get better or to follow a treatment plan, and it's out of your control. There's nothing you can do. You have to find a way to accept that, because you can lead a horse to water. You can't make it drink. And that is so true. And if your partner doesn't want to take care of themselves, then that tells you a lot about how much your partner wants your marriage to work. And you have to, I think a lot of people have a hard time accepting that for some people, it's just not worth it to them to save their marriage. You know, I think that there's this like disconnect sometimes. And it's sometimes they're not even thinking that, because they're not thinking, I don't want to save my marriage. I want to, but not enough to take my pills, not enough to go to the doctor, not enough to go to therapy, not enough to do all of these things and be honest with myself, right? It's the other partner's, I think, responsibility to themselves to be strong enough, resilient enough, and be accepting and honest enough to say, well, until you can do that, we're not going to be okay. Yeah. And you have to be really honest about that, because it hurts people. And then you have the children are affected, right? And everybody, there's more collateral damage, I think, when you're not honest with yourself as the spouse that is actually thinking clearly and is not going through that illness. Of course, do everything you can to get that person there and continue to help them, but you've got to do what you need to do to make sure you're okay and your children are okay.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, Kevin, when you were speaking and you came to Arizona and, you know, we learned more about you, Mikkel was like, how in the world does he travel so much? Because for Mikkel, traveling is a drain.
It's really hard. Like, I'm really careful about managing my schedule, like bedtime, wake time, gym time, like I don't know, social events. I really have to keep those few and far between. So I was blown away by your ability to literally travel. What do you travel, like 250 to 300 days a year speaking? And
but you know what, I built that into my routine, so I'm used to it. It is part of my routine, and that's what I think people don't realize, is that it wasn't easy at first, and I could transition out of it now, but I enjoy the travel. I still follow my routine and my regimen to the best of my ability wherever I am in the world, and I give myself that 2 hour
to
like,
2 days sometimes
to 2 hour to 2 day difference between, you know, for example, like I take my pills at the same time every day, everywhere I am, no matter the time zone. So I adjust for the time zone.
Okay.
So I do that. I exercise where I go. I eat anti-inflammatory meals as often as I can. I'm doing the best I can with all these things. I do struggle with food issues, and that's part of that is travel related. But I work really hard to balance it.
But sleep is, I think, one of the most important things for Kevin. So we bake that into our travel schedule. For instance, earlier this year, we went to Japan for the military, and we had to be there for a week. But I added on a few days ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then when we got back to the States, I kept a few days open so that we can readjust. So the few days ahead of time was the jet lag and to sleep. And what we do is we hunker down in the hotel with a gym, make sure we're eating properly, and we readjust his sleeping schedule. But it was also mine. It's both of ours. I don't function well without 8 hours of sleep. I need 8. 10 is even better, but 8 is good. And Kevin too, he's really good with 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So when we bake that into our schedule, it actually makes a huge difference. So by the time, 2 days later, sometimes 3 days later, when he's on stage in Okinawa and he's speaking to 10,000 servicemen and women, he's good. He's crisp. He's on his game because he's had his proper food. He's had his exercise. He's adjusted. Then we come back to the States like a week and a half later, and it's like we're home, or we will fly to California. We live in Georgia now, but when we're in California or Georgia or wherever the closest place to the coast, what we do is we flew to LA, and we actually stayed in LA for a couple days and readjusted again. Yeah. Right.
That's really wise. I actually had not, I mean, yeah, some of that surprises me, but it makes so much sense. I'm like, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah,
I'll travel.
Yeah. We adjust accordingly to what we need.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
with what you do, I mean, you have to be on. I mean, it's not like you can just walk.
You can't just show up and smile and be like,
walk into the office and just kind of have a down day. I mean, you people are, and you were high energy, when you were in.
Very much so. It was.
And so, you have to, we're just like, wow, how do you maintain that? It's not just once a year you do this or twice a year you do this. It's constantly. So anyway, kudos to you for figuring out how to.
That actually gives me a lot of hope, because I'm sure you don't know that we have 3 children. Our oldest and youngest are married. And then our middle son just got accepted to school in Hawaii to do marine biology. He's a commercial diver, so he's going to do scientific research diving. And our oldest just got accepted to medical school in Australia. So everybody's leaving in like 2 weeks all the way around the world. And I am now like, okay, traveling was never on my list. And I'm like, I got to figure out how to travel and keep my schedule, because no way am I not seeing all of my favorite people in my world, like, all right, now I go to Hawaii, now we go to Australia. So thank you for letting me see that I can be okay. We can do this. We can still
Readjust your
people.
sleep, drink a lot of water, drink like electrolytes for sure, eat properly. And
And rest is your indelible right.
yeah, and take meds at the same time every day based on
my home time
Yeah.
frame.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I know, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I also feel like, gosh, I know our time is up. We scheduled for an hour, but seriously, even Kevin, when you were like anti-inflammatory, I'm like, I want to pick your brain on your whole treatment in 2011 and what you did there, and then the anti-inflammatory. Like, there's so many things I feel like I can learn from you, and I work so hard to be educated and make sure that, I mean, really, the most important thing I do every single day is manage this illness so that I can be lovely. That's how I phrase it, so that I can be lovely to everyone around me. And I just wish that we could have 2 or 3 more couple dinner dates together so that I can talk more about this.
We will. We'll come out to Arizona. As soon as we come out, we plan something to come to Phoenix. You're our first phone call.
Please do. Please do.
Although I have one question to wrap us up if I can.
Okay.
So I wrote this down because I'm just wondering, Kevin, what motivates you to get up every day and do what you do? Obviously, this is not convenient for you to travel and to be on, as much. And, when you were speaking and even afterwards, you talk to people that come up to you afterwards. It's not just when you're on stage, but you stick around, and whoever wants to come up, they all want to come up and tell you their story, and you just help and help and help. So what is it that motivates you to do all of this, if you can explain?
Oddly enough, people's pain motivates me. It fuels me. And the flip side of that coin is that people also share their pain with me all the time, and their most harrowing, troubling issues. But people also share with me on a daily basis, and I'm sure you know about this, how much my story has impacted their lives. Mm-hmm. And that's a gift. And I do not take that for granted. Yeah. In 23 years of doing this work, hundreds of thousands of people have said this story saved their life. I don't own that. I've never saved a life. I'm a conduit. I give a message. They go home, they do the work. They ask their parents for help. They go to a therapist. They go to a counselor. They tell the truth for the first time in therapy, and they get the help they need. They're saving their own lives. But they've given me this gift of telling me that you doing this work made a difference in my life, which means for me, it's quite simple. I have to keep doing this work.
It's cathartic too, right? Because then
it's the most cathartic thing I've ever done in my life. It's more cathartic than therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel so honored that we get to sit in it. It feels like a sacred space to us as well. And when people reach out, and I mean, I haven't been as public for as long as you have, but I know making that transition over, when I published my own book 8 years ago, the shift and the difference, and just the power and positive energy I felt being able to sit in this very sacred, very hard space with people. But it is such a privilege. It's such a privilege to I don't know, to just be there with people.
Yeah, it is.
Agreed.
It is. It's a blessing,
Agreed.
That you get to do. This is purpose. It's a purpose-driven life.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
You guys are the best. We visited a few minutes before. We were talking and we had to hurry and curtail the conversation because we're like, we got to record. We got to hit record because I just want to keep talking. But you had shared a project that you're going to be launching in 2024 with us, and I am so excited. Do you want to tell everybody what it is?
Sure. We are relaunching the Hines podcast, which has been on pause, as a couples podcast. At least we're going to be hosting it as a couple, and talking to people of all walks of life who have triumphed over incredible adversity.
Other
couples as well, and to show,
to tackle relationship issues, family issues,
yeah,
and really talk through some of the issues that we get in private from other couples, right? So we want to bring that to the forefront so that we can open up that conversation, normalize that conversation, and make it okay to be able to function and have a mental illness, and for people to understand that, you know, just because you have a mental illness, like Kevin thought at one point that you would never be in a healthy relationship. That's just not true.
Right. But I never felt love. And here I am with the most loving, kind, compassionate woman I've ever met in my life, and the happiest I've ever been.
He said he thought nobody would ever love him because he had bipolar disorder.
Yeah, we've heard that.
Well, I mean, I remember trying to date, and when you get to the point of like, oh, I have bipolar depression, then just not getting a phone call back every day.
Right.
Yeah.
Lobster sauce and lobster.
Not everybody
Like, it
can.
was other reasons that I didn't call you back. It had nothing to do with bipolar.
There's a diamond in the rough.
Oh my gosh. I can't wait to have you guys come out here. Thank you for sitting with us for so long. It has been so much fun. It honestly has just been like, it has felt like hanging out with friends that we just love to be with. So thank you for being so genuine and open with us.
Of course. Absolutely. You guys are a pleasure. We can't wait to get to know you both more and to spend some time with you. So let's do it.
Awesome. Let's do it. Well, thank you to all of our listeners. Thank you so much for being here today. We're so excited that you got to see Kevin and Margaret in person. And Margaret, this is one of your first podcasts. You haven't done a lot of these, right?
No, I haven't.
First of many.
The first of many to come. So yeah.
Maybe
Everyone's going to be like, Kevin, would you mind supporting Margaret? She's going to come and talk all about, she's a little more pragmatic than you are. So I think we're just going to need that direct message from her.
the story is so much better though. Right? I told you very different style.
I actually loved them both. It was, again, it's so funny to hear them both, but watch both of your faces while the other was talking. Seriously, that was so funny.
No poker faces here.
I know.
And then you hear
know.
both of them and you're like, oh, it all makes sense now. It all makes sense. So thank you for.
I know. Thank you for that. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you to all of our listeners. We will do all sorts of links so you can find Kevin's story. His website is Kevin Hines Story. His Instagram handle is Kevin Hines Story. You can connect him through there and get to his films and his books and all the other incredible things that he does. So if you like this podcast, share it with a friend. This is a great one to share with a friend because Kevin and Margaret are amazing. So then you get two couple friends out of the same podcast. So there you go. If you don't like the podcast, don't tell anyone about it. We just want it shared to people who like it, right? If you have questions or topics that you would like to see covered, you can submit them on Instagram at mentalillness.warrior or on our website, mentalillnesswarrior.com. And remember, there are no topics that are off limits and no questions that aren't okay to ask. We will see you next time.
See you next time.